Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We welcome you on behalf of WOCAT, the Colorado State University, UNEP, Jeff, and ISRIC to this joint event, Managing Soils for a Sustainable Future, a tool set, which is held on behalf or on the occasion, of World Soil Day 2020. My name is Nicole Harari. I'm from CDE WOCAT and I'm doing the moderation today. So just a few housekeeping rules to observe. So we will run the webinar for 1 hour. We will record the webinar. And we decided that we would do the question and answer session on Slido. So you can see here the address and the event code, and it's also in the chat. So please go to Slido and pose your questions there. You will have to log in with your email address, and this will also help us to get back to your specific questions later this week. So please do not use the Zoom chat function for questions, but post them on the Slido. Then please mute your microphone and stop your video so we can all hear each other. And the last point, the slides of today will be made available on the WOCAT website. You can see the link here, as well as the Carbon Benefits Project website. And if you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact us. You can see here the 2 email addresses where you can contact us. So again, please go to Slido eventually and use that event code to log in and ask the question throughout the session. With this, again, a warm welcome. Here is the agenda for today. So we will introduce you to the WOCAT Carbon Benefits Project linkage, and we'll try to show you how you can estimate the carbon benefits of sustainable land management. We will have some welcome remarks by Eduardo from UNEP, and then continued by Eleonor, Tatenda, and Guhan from Colorado State University and CDE WOCAT on the linkage between the Carbon Benefits Project and WOCAT tools. And then we will have a word by Baron Orr, the lead scientist of UNCCD, and then a joint question and answer session, not a too long one, maybe around 10 minutes, and some final remarks by Andre from ISRIC Wageningen University. So with this, I hand over the word to Eduardo, please. Eduardo is the chief of the scientific assessment branch of the science division at UNEP. Eduardo, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just checking whether you can hear me well and see me as well.
Yes, very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So thanks everyone for being here, and thanks most importantly to all the WOCAT team for having me at this workshop. I think it's a very useful and informative set of tools that we are going to hear about today. And it comes very nicely around the World Soil Day. You know, the theme of World Soil Day, keeping soils alive, protecting soil biodiversity, has been covered in many events. And today we speak about something very specific related to climate and the co-benefits of climate change mitigation and sustainable land management. So thanks very much for inviting me. WOCAT has been an essential partner in the UNEP-Jeff funded project on sustainable land management and climate change mitigation co-benefits, along with the Carbon Benefits Project that is led by Colorado State University and other partners, including the World Bank and Land Potential Knowledge System. Working with these partners, the project has delivered enhanced set of toolkits that are now very well interlinked, connecting the WOCAT that hosts the UNCCD recommended global database on sustainable land management approaches and technologies, and the Carbon Benefits Project's greenhouse gases accounting tools. And all that is also aligned with the Land Potential Knowledge System mobile application developed with World Bank partners. The team today will explore the links between the WOCAT and the Carbon Benefits project tools in more detail. But let me go over quickly some of the key results of this very important initiative. Over the past 5 years, the team hosted technical training events all over the world across, I think, 11 countries, as well as many events online globally, to make these interlinked tool sets available to a wide range of users. Currently, I think 16 trainings have resulted in over 350 participants trained. In many instances, the people trained have taken their knowledge they've gained, and they've now training others. In many cases, they have translated training materials into other languages, so some of the material now is available also in addition to English, also in French, in Spanish, and Russian. And I think more will be coming as this becomes, these sets of tools and becomes more widely used. Currently, as far as we know, it is being used in over 160 countries with over 1,500 registered users and applied in over 2,000 projects worldwide. The project, the GF-funded project with UNEP and partners, is now wrapping up, but the activities, of course, will continue with these interconnected tools now available and being widely used worldwide through the initiatives of all the project partners. A final publication on lessons learned is also coming out early next year. We hope that that can help share experiences of the project with all the partners involved and land managers and project managers worldwide. Let me say that the project achievement and all the work of the partners has greatly benefited our efforts with the UN Environment Programme, and also particularly with our UNEP portfolio of projects that focus on climate change mitigation, sustainable land management, and hopefully it will benefit also it is already probably benefiting other partners in the Global Environment Facility, GF family, other implementing agencies and executing partners, by helping at various stages, from the design and planning phase stage to the monitoring element of projects, and then finally on the reporting on climate change mitigation co-benefits in SLM work. In the planning and design stage, managers and land users can learn from the many approaches and technologies that the WOCAT database offers, and then we can understand the greenhouse gas co-benefits that are brought by sustainable land management using the Carbon Benefit Project's accounting tools. Then during the project life, land users, project managers can monitor greenhouse gas co-benefits throughout the project's life cycle and then report at the end on the benefits that the projects have generated throughout the project lifetime. And of course, all the training that was provided has hopefully made all these tools and features more widely known and available to all partners engaged. Of course, let me just conclude with saying that we are very grateful and I think very impressed by the excellent achievements of this initiative. And this all would not have been possible without the outstanding technical expertise, leadership, and support by all partners involved. And I'm happy to hand over to Eleanor from the Colorado State University, her project coordinator, who was extremely helpful and has driven the many elements of the project for such a long time. So I think she will provide an overview of the Carbon Benefit project tools And with this, I close, and I like to thank you again and wishing you all a very good webinar. I hope this is informative and helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Eduardo. Just checking, can everybody hear me? Okay, super. That was an excellent introduction. And of course, I'd like to return the thanks and say thank you to UNEP for their support over many, many years of all of our tools and their engagement with understanding the importance of land management and the role it plays in climate change mitigation. And that's what I'm going to talk about now, just briefly to say a little bit about land management. Next slide, please. So I'd like to start off with this quote, which is from the UNCCD Executive Secretary, and it was in response to a recent IPCC special report on climate change and land. And it says, we must harness the enormous positive potential of our lands and make them part of the climate solution. So sustainable land management is important for so many reasons. It's important for biodiversity, for increasing livelihoods, but it also can play an enormous part in climate change mitigation. You can see from this slide here, the majority of greenhouse gas emissions that end up in the atmosphere actually come from the energy, transportation, industry, and waste sector. And they're actually associated with the burning of fossil fuels. However, about a third of anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions actually come from land use change and agriculture. So when we change land use, when we cut down forests and we turn them into agricultural lands, we lose carbon from the carbon stored in the biomass, and this ends up in the atmosphere and exacerbates the problems of climate change. So we really do have a large opportunity here for land management to be used in a way that can mitigate climate change. This diagram here shows you each of the different emissions and stock changes that are associated with agriculture and land use change. And I think the main takeaway from this diagram is that it's actually a complicated situation. Unlike other sectors, there's lots of different things going on. And crucially, unlike other sectors, land management has the possibility to be part of the solution as well as being part of the problem. Just next click, please. So I'll just go through these, and so you can see where all the different stock changes and emissions are coming from. So as I've said, if we remove trees from our landscape, then we lose the carbon that's stored in them. And conversely, if we add trees, then we add storage of carbon to our landscape. Can you just go back, please? Back to the previous slide. Thank you. So if this land use is cleared using fire, then we tend to have emissions which are non-CO2 emissions associated with burning. And of course, burning can also be a land management practice. So many grasslands are burnt on a regular basis, and this can actually lead to emissions of non-CO2 greenhouse gases. We also, if you change land use, we end up with changes in the carbon that's stored in soils. And of course, this being World Soils Day, this is very important. And also the way that we manage our agricultural lands through tillage practices and what happens to residues all impacts carbon stocks in soils. If we have livestock in our landscape, then these actually emit methane, and the manure that they produce emits methane and N2O. And then we also have emissions of N2O associated with the soil itself. Typically, this is in association with the amount of nitrogen fertilizer that's used and other types of fertilizer as well. Okay, thank you. That's all of my stock changes. But as you can see, the main thing to take away is it's a complicated situation, but it does provide us with a lot of opportunities to be able to mitigate greenhouse gases. So some of the ways are we can increase the uptake and storage of carbon dioxide in biomass and also in soils. Next click, please. We can do this by maintaining existing forest lands, preserving them. We can do it by adding trees to agricultural systems. You can see a picture of agroforestry here. And also through the way that we manage our soils. We can move to reducing the amount of tillage, so it reduces decomposition and we store more carbon in the soils. Next slide, please. We can reduce N2O emissions from soils by the way that we manage them, judicious use of nitrogen fertilizer. And we can also reduce emissions by management of livestock, methane emissions from livestock and the manure that they produce. And then the last is if we have a mechanized agricultural system, then we'll also have machinery involved in that, and we can reduce the fossil fuel emissions which are associated with the use of that machinery. Okay, next clip. So estimating how land management can impact climate change mitigation is important to a whole range of different organisations. It's important to the Global Environment Facility, who funded the production of these tools, to different UN agencies who want to know how their activities are impacting climate change mitigation, to land managers themselves, to NGOs, to government ministries. And of course, government ministries are obliged, if they're signed up to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, to do regular reporting from all of the sectors. So understanding how land management impacts climate change mitigation is important for them. Next slide, please. So, as we've seen, it's complicated and it's not possible to measure everything that's going on in a landscape. So what's needed is a way of assessing this, a way of estimating it. And this is exactly what the carbon benefits tools do. And now I'm going to move on to the second part of the presentation, which is introducing the carbon benefits tools. So the carbon benefits tools provides you with a set of online tools. You can go to the website here, and the website, if you could just go back a slide, please. The website is actually given on the invitation as well. They're free to use. You just click on the link and then you can register with an email address and you can start using them straight away. Okay, next slide, please. They provide tools which allow you to compare different scenarios with each other. So typically a business as usual scenario compared with a project scenario. And it looks at all of the stock changes and greenhouse gas emissions which are associated with your business as usual scenario and compares this with what would happen under your project scenario. Next slide, please. You start off when you log on to the system, you pull up a map, and on this map you tell the system where it is you're working. So you can either do this by drawing directly on the map, or you can upload a GIS, or you can also put in points file. So here we have multiple different units. We have 3 polygons. Can I just ask that people stop using the chat at the minute, just for the minute, because it's coming up on top of the presentation? Okay, thank you. So we have 2 polygons here, one of which has got forest land, which is being avoided deforestation, another area where we have reforestation, and then we have lots of dots across the landscape, and these are actually smallholder farmers who are working in the landscape. So you can see you can have different spatial areas. Next slide, please. The rest of the system is then you go through a process of describing which land use categories are present in each of those spatial areas and how that land is managed. And all the information that's collected in the Carbon Benefits Project is basically the same kind of information that a land manager would have. What's being grown, where is it being grown, how much fertilizer is being added, etc. So this is a forest land page, and you can see it's asking for your tree type and your age of your tree. And so you go through this process for your initial conditions, for your baseline or business as usual scenario, and your project scenario. Next slide, please. This is an example of annual crop plans page. So we can see that our baseline scenario has some annual crop plans. You would choose the spatial area that you're working on, and you would then, from the next box, number 2, could you next click, please? You would get a drop-down list of typical cropping systems, and you choose one, put it in the box below, and then you start to describe how that's being managed. So once you've gone through this process of describing everything, you're in the position to be able to create a report. And you can create a graph by clicking on this View Graph button. Next click, please. And it will pull up a graph, and we can see here we have an increase in biomass carbon stocks and an increase in soil carbon stocks. So everything that's below this 0 line is good and shows either sequestration or avoided emissions, and everything above is red and shows emissions to the atmosphere. Next click, please. And you can also then create a summary report. So this is an 8-page PDF in a standardized format, and it includes 2 tables, and there's an example of one here. And this gives you a split of all of your different greenhouse gases emissions, your stocks, your sources, for your baseline scenario, for your project scenario, and the difference between the two. And it's this which is being linked to WOCAT. So that's the next part of the story. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Eleanor, for this introduction into the CBP tools. And let me now come to the database which has been linked with the CBP tools to allow actually a greenhouse gas assessment of selected sustainable land management technologies. But maybe first, just a small reminder, or for those who just joined us briefly, please do not use the Zoom chat for questions, as we cannot handle them there. Please use the Slido website with your mobile or with your computer and ask your questions there. So if we cannot answer all the questions in our Q&A session later on, we will come back to you by email. So over the last few days, on occasion of the World Soil Day, we were talking and hearing a lot about soil, about keeping soil alive and protecting soil biodiversity. When land is degraded, it loses its soil biodiversity, or maybe the other way around. If soil loses its biodiversity, it can be degraded easily, causing land to produce less food, store less water, sequester less carbon, or even release carbon into the atmosphere, as we just learned before by Eleanor. Therefore, sustainable land management is crucial for avoiding, reducing, or even reversing land degradation, and thus keeping the soil alive and protecting soil biodiversity. These are also objectives of the World Overview of Conservation Approaches and Technologies, short WOCAT, which I briefly would like to present. But as most of you may know WOCAT already, or even used our tools or questionnaires before, I will not go into detail and try to keep it very short. So can I ask everybody to mute yourself? Thanks a lot. Just to recapitalize, WOCAT is a global network on sustainable land management that promotes the documentation, sharing and use of knowledge to support adaptation, innovation and decision-making in sustainable land management. It was established more than 25 years ago, or actually almost 28 years ago, after the Earth Summit in Rio '92. It is formalized and defined by a framework agreement with 8 consortium partners, which you can see listed below. But currently, we are developing a new strategy with a new organizational setup, which will be launched hopefully early next year. Consortium partners and individual institutions members will be more involved in the steering and operational action, and 6 regional clusters will be established to enhance regional capacities and also to strengthen the South-South collaboration. So the WOCAT's mission is to support innovation and decision-making in sustainable land management. And this by maintaining the global and open SLM network with many engaged individuals and also institutions from more than 50 countries worldwide. Another pillar is the open access Global SLM database, which contains a series of standardized tools and methods for knowledge making and decision support in sustainable land management. And of course, very important is here to highlight that it is the UNCCD primary recommended database for the SLM best practice reporting. So almost weekly, we get new documented practices in the database by different stakeholders around the globe. And you can see here, yesterday we had 1,166 technologies, of which many, I think, would be suitable for a greenhouse gas assessment with the carbon benefit project tool. And therefore, the linkage is crucial at this stage. Very important to stress is that WOCAT is supporting projects and institutions to build their capacities in the assessment of land degradation and the evaluation of potential sustainable land management solutions. WOCAT is there by responding to the requests and demands from countries, institutions, and projects who would like to receive support in the application of WOCAT tools and methods at local, regional, or national level. And finally, the reason of why we are here today is the pillar 4, to harmonize and further develop tools and methods. But here I would like to give you a short overview of application and tools and databases which are currently or which have been linked with WOCAT within the last few months or years. So always with the objective to support the user in choosing the appropriate tools without entering the same information and again, but also to avoid reinventing the wheel with every new tool or database or application. So in order to foster concerted action, use and further build synergies, with the new strategy, we will continue linking our tools and database with other platforms, as you can see here. The carbon benefit project tools, of course, you will learn a lot about today. The GOC, the Global Geoinformatic Options by Context, which is a tool by ICARDA for supporting better targeting and scaling out of sustainable land management, where information from WOCAT will be made available in the GOC or vice versa. Data from GOC will be uploaded to the WOCAT database. As part of the GeoLDN competition, which is currently ongoing, we are developing together a tool for land use planning for LDN. And within a Jeff-funded project entitled Strengthening Land Degradation Neutrality, Data and Decision Making through Free and Open Access Platforms, also known as Tools for LDN, WOCAT will be linked with Trends.Earth and Land PKS. Another application is Farm Better, a mobile app that uses farmers' location and metrics on their farming in order to provide farmers with actionable knowledge on how to adapt to climate change and improve their resilience. Currently, also an offline app has been developed in the project Decision Support for Mainstreaming and Scaling Out Sustainable Land Management, short SLM. And our Thailand colleagues developed a tool with an offline app, which is now being linked with WOCAT, where it will be possible to collect information in the field with an application. But we are also improving accessibility of data, of the data of our sustainable land management database with a new visualization and analysis tool, which will be made available in a few weeks as well. In order to foster concerted action, use and further build synergies, we are also involved in different global initiatives, like the 4 per mil, Global Restoration Observatory, GeoLDN, or we are also official supporting partner of the UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration. So, but after this short introduction about WOCAT and all our linking activities, I would like to come back to the main objective of this webinar, the linkage of WOCAT and the CBP tools. So this linkage contains 4 main steps. First, documentation of SLM technology in WOCAT. Then the second step, the import of the data from WOCAT to the CBP tools to allow user to enter the CBP tool with already filled in information from WOCAT. A carry out and greenhouse gas assessment by the CBP tool. So step 2 and 3 will be explained by Eleanor after after me. And then in step 4, to upload the CBP summary back to the WOCAT SLM database, which has been put live actually this morning, thanks to Guhan, who will then present this step where the summary from the CBP tool will be, together with the WOCAT technology summary, be presented in one database. So let's assume we are documenting a close area management in Ethiopia. You're first collecting all information with a paper questionnaire, or soon with an offline app, together with key resource person and local land users. If you have this information, you will sign up to WOCAT for a WOCAT account and log into the WOCAT SLM database and create a new entry form. Here you can store and edit your documentation about the closed area management, in our case, as long as you like, and as soon you think the quality is good enough, you can submit it to the review process. After the review process, so in the review process, documentation will be reviewed on the content and completeness of the documented technology. After the review process, your documentation will be published on the WOCAT Global SLM database. That means your technology is now available as standardized PDF with all information here about background, the location of the technology, classification of a technology, implementation and maintenance costs, as an example, natural conditions and characteristics of land users, economic, social, and environmental impact assessment, but not only looking on the on-site impact, but also on the off-site benefits and drawbacks, adoption and adaptation, lessons learned, and last but not least, of course, also very crucial, the references. But this information is not only available as a PDF, it can be downloaded and analyzed with a new visualization and analysis tool, which I've just mentioned before, or it can be transferred through the API to another tool, application, or platform, as in our case, we transfer the information from WOCAT to the carbon benefit project tool. Then I would like to hand over again to Eleonore.
Thank you very much, Tatenda. So you can see from Tatenda's overview, very nice overview of WOCAT, that you collect an awful lot of information. There's an awful lot of detail there. So it really is very good that you can now transport this into the carbon benefits project. It stops you from having to collect all of that information over and over again. And sometimes I think with projects, we put a lot of a burden on sustainable land management project managers, asking them to document things over again in different formats and use different tools. So the type of information you can bring across general information from your WOCAT entry, which is the name of your project, where you're working, etc. You can bring across this spatial information, so that's where your technologies are actually going to take place. And then crucially, you can bring in quite a lot of this land use and land management information, the sort of thing that really runs the carbon benefits project and allows you to make a carbon assessment. Next slide. So usually when you go into the CBP, there's a project which says add new project, and you would go through and put everything in by hand. But for about a year now, we've had this import WOCAT technology button. So you can just click on this, next slide, and it will bring up a list of all relevant WOCAT technologies. Now these, you can either look for your technology number, if you know that. You could look for the name of a technology, or you could also look for the country which the technology is happening in. Next clip, please. Thank you. And you can sort. So you can sort them by country, by name, and also by number. So here we've chosen Ethiopia, and this is a technology which was actually documented by Bekelu Bitu, who's actually on the call, and thank you very much for joining us today. So we're going to look at importing this one. So what you would do, there's a button which is just off the slide which says select, and you would click that and it would start importing all the information from this particular documented land management technology into CBP. It typically brings across about between 50 and 60% of the information that you need to do an analysis. This is because each WOCAT entry has a different amount of detail and different details, but typically it's about 60%. What happens first of all, it tells you that you've imported it successfully. Sorry, could you just go back to the previous one? And you get this message which flags up where you need to do some more work. So we've got a message here. It says that livestock is present. So in this particular entry, it said there were livestock in the area, but it didn't say how many. So we need to go through and put the numbers in. Okay, next slide. So for the general information that comes across, it has things like the name of your project, it has the technology number, the country you're working in, the project regions. It brings across your project activities. So this says it's closed area management in a learning watershed. And it also then gives some detail here. All of this again is being brought over from the WOCAT entry. So in this particular example, we're looking at exclosures for an area which has been overgrazed in the past. They're going to keep livestock out, going to allow vegetation to regenerate, and also going to plant some tree species within there. Next slide, please. Okay, so this also brings across the spatial information, and you can just about make out there are 3 yellow dots on this slide, and these 3 yellow dots are the points where this SLM technology has been implemented in Baheda in Ethiopia. Next slide, please. And then, of course, it brings across information on your different land management categories. So we can see here it's highlighted grassland, agroforestry and livestock. We're in the initial conditions. So in WOCAT, you're asked to also, as well as documenting your technology, document what was there before your technology was implemented. So your business as usual, if you like. It's in the CBP system, if things are in green, it means they're complete, you don't need to do anything else. And if they're in red, it means you still have work to do and you still have data to enter. So here we can say we're in the project scenario and it's pulled across that we have tree species being planted in this area, we have grevillea and also acacia species. And again, it didn't pull across the number of trees, so we need to put these in by hand. So you would go through the process, you import your technology, you look where the gaps are, you fill in the missing information, which is about 40%, and you're then in a position to actually carry out a greenhouse gas assessment. So you'll have a documented, very thoroughly documented WOCAT technology, and you can also now carry out an assessment of how that's likely to impact greenhouse gas emissions and carbon stock changes. Next slide, please. So we go to our reports page, which we looked at before, and we can straight away produce a graph. And in this case, we can see that we have an increase in our biomass carbon stocks because of these trees we've planted, because of the grassland biomass, and also an increase in carbon stocks in soils. But also we have a slight increase in emissions because of some nitrogen fertilizer that's been added, and increase in emissions from livestock because with this particular documented technology, more livestock were added. Next slide, please. And so we can produce with this summary report, this 8-page PDF document, which will explain all of this in detail and has these tables for us, which lists all of the greenhouse gas sources and sinks and our overall carbon benefit, which is likely to arise from us implementing this sustainable land management technology. I should just say that anybody can pull in a WOCAT technology into the CBP and do an analysis. Only the actual author of that technology could then get it linked back to the sustainable, to the WOCAT entry. And that's what Guhan's going to talk about now. So I'll hand over to Guhan for that.
So can I ask Guhan to share his screen?
Yes. Hello, everyone. So I'm here to present about the linkage between WOCAT and the CBP. So as Tatenda and Eleanor have explained so clearly, once the technology is documented in WOCAT and the data is imported into CBP and the CBP summary has been generated, then we link the CBP summary back into WOCAT by adding a module. So as we can see in these images, this is how the CBP module is going to look like in the image on the right. And the image on the left showcases how we present the carbon benefits project on the WOCAT website. So the module fits like the other modules that we have, and it's fully functional. And it also has the edit and review capabilities that Tatenda discussed earlier. Okay, so there are two ways to add a CBP module in WOCAT, and the first is from the add module location. And so by clicking the add button for this carbon benefits project, the user is presented with this screen where you will have to find, you can type and select a technology, and then you can choose between these two modules. And in our case, we would choose the carbon benefits project summary module, and then you would click the create module. The other way to add a module is from within the technology itself. So let's say we have a compiler of a technology who's trying to add a module. So if they scroll down to the links and module section and they expand that section, there's going to be a add a new module button there. And clicking that will lead them to a similar screen as the previous add CBP module. And here, in this case, the technology has already been selected because we are working on this from within the technology itself. So same process, you would click on the carbon benefits project summary module and you would click create. So once the user clicks that, the CBP module is created for them. It's linked to a particular technology, and this is how it shows up. So there are two sections here. One is the general information, and that's what we will first see. And the second one is where we submit the summary from the carbon benefits project into. So here's section one. It's just the technology name and the country. The user cannot edit these as this is already linked to this particular technology. And here's section, the second part of section one, where we can add the compilers, the projects, and the institutions that are supporting this carbon benefits project module. So we can add more than one user. If they are a registered user, you can look up the registered WOCAT user. Otherwise, you can enter non-registered users information as well. And the projects and institutions, if they're not available in the list, we can contact WOCAT and we could add the projects and institutions. And the third part is the data use approval. For those familiar with WOCAT, this is not new. We're just asking you to give consent that we can use the data that you are entering and sharing here. Section two is where the bulk of the module is, right? So the summary PDF that we've developed in the CBP tools is brought over here. So we have a drag and drop functionality for the PDF, and then we can also, the user can also add the results. They can describe the results if they want briefly as well. So once the users have gone through this a couple of times, maybe they are ready to then submit their CBP module. So once submitted, the WOCAT Secretariat and the CBP team, which includes Eleanor and Mark Easter, will review the CBP summary. And once the review process is complete, like how Tatenda described earlier, the CBP module will be made public. I'd like to remind people here that once again, only the compiler of the technology can add a CBP module to the technology itself. So here we can see we have the opportunity to edit the questionnaire, the CBP module, and we can also invite other editors to participate in the editing process of the CBP module. So once a CBP module has been added to a technology, this is how it looks. As we can see on the right bottom corner of that screen grab, there is the CBP tools logo. So that module shows up. So With this, I hand over to Eleanor once again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guhan, and thank you very much for working so hard to get this all live today. I'm very excited to see it here. So we're now in a position where for all new WOCAT entries, we can people can easily import it into CBP. It means they can do a greenhouse gas assessment. They know what the impact of their new WOCAT technology is likely to be on climate change mitigation. We're also in the process of writing proposals to try to get to a point where we can go through the entire back catalogue of existing WOCAT entries, because I think if we had a database where every single sustainable land management technology had an associated climate change mitigation assessment with it, it would be an extremely powerful tool for all kinds of organisations. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you, Tatenda and Guhan. So we came to the end of the presentation. Some questions are starting to pop up. So if you have questions, please enter the Slido and post them there. So we can try to answer them in the Q&A or later. And now I would hand over to Baron for his input. Baron, great, you're here.
Thank you. Thank you all for really very encouraging what I've seen in these presentations. I think, as you all know on this call, the UNCCD is the Rio Convention that links the environment and development to sustainable land management. Much of the work of the Secretariat is focused on the national to global, I kind of say that in quotes, policy development and monitoring of progress so that countries themselves and projects on the ground can address the national to local implementation. That is quite a continuum if you think about it. You know, some of these photographs are showing very specific actions in very specific locations that we need to bring up to a global level and the other way around. All those levels must be able to act and interact as seamlessly as possible for success. And achieving that requires the collaboration of partners towards a common objective. And what you've seen today is that the Carbon Benefits Project and WOCAT are two very, very important partners in what has become a federated approach to addressing land degradation with the aim of helping achieve the many types of benefits that you have just heard discussed by Eduardo, Eleanor, Tatenda, and Guyan. What is clear is that it is the linking of the tools that the sought after benefits can be identified and the impact of our actions can be measured and monitored and ultimately inform this national to global reporting through national governments and the UNCCD. And why does that matter? Well, the most common question our stakeholders ask about carbon is something like, I know that carbon is pivotal, but how do I know what exactly I should do to keep it in the soil or sequester more? How do I know exactly where I should do this and the potential that it will work? How much carbon will be maintained because of the technologies I choose to employ? How do I measure all of this effectively? Before CBP and WOCAT integrated their approaches, the answer to these questions required information both could provide, but nobody could easily integrate. And now managers can generate that information in an almost entirely seamless way. This development alone has moved many from planning to action, which is exactly what's needed today. What are the future aspirations of the UNCCD country parties in this regard? Even further integration, both along the continuum local, national, and global, and also among other tools. You heard about Land PKS, for example, and there are many others that are seeking this through the Group on Earth Observations LDN initiative. Both countries and over 133 Earth observation organizations are working towards such a federated approach to tools, open source, open access. the APIs that make this possible for greater and greater integration, and each tool playing a critical role. The UNCCD Secretariat is also advancing efforts to improve the human side of these linkages. If you think about it, the policies that are needed to encourage the measurements, et cetera, that we're looking for on the ground. And that's crossing that whole continuum, local to national to global and back down again. Helping all those that are identified, helping all of us identify and address bottlenecks along the way. And in this, I will add, because it was touched on in each presentation, it's helping us move the focus. In addition to the traditional focus on land management, we need also collective work on land use planning, because obviously, if the land use changes, then all of that monitoring is for naught. We've got to control land conversion. If we do this, we'll help countries do the right things in the right places at the right scale, land degradation neutrality. And this, if done correctly, should lead to less land conversion, a lot more SLM, a lot more rehabilitation and restoration. And we applaud the work of the initiatives you have just heard from as we are optimizing these linkages into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Baron. We are now moving to the Q&A. We see that some questions are popping up to clarify further about what the tool can do, what the CBP can do, and so on. So let me start with one question, maybe to Eleanor. The question here is about standards. So has the CBP tool been considered for certification under one of the standards, VCS gold standards, to generate certified emission reductions? So I hand that over to you, Eleanor.
Okay, so the answer to that is that it hasn't gone through the process of being a sort of certified part of VCS or one of the other standards, because they tend to have protocols, if you like. But because we do use the IPCC method, the detailed assessment of the CBP is very much in line with what you would need to do for a sustainable land management project for VCS. And we're actually in the process at the moment of writing a guidance document, which will tell people how they can collect their information to meet all the requirements of a sustainable land management through the SLM protocol in VCS, and then use the carbon benefits tool as their tool to estimate carbon stock changes. So that's in answer to that. So hopefully that guidance should be coming out fairly soon.
Great, thank you, Eleanor. Another question which might be of interest to people here in the audience is from Kim Soben. Hello, Kim, from Cambodia. So Mr. Soben is interested in knowing how you could link to an economic valuation. So I don't know who wants to, from the farm to the landscape level, whether there is a possibility to also do an economic assessment or valuation.
I think we could. Shall I go first with that one, and then I'll hand over to Tatenda. So within the CBP tools, we have cost-benefit analysis. It's quite basic, but it is there. We go through a process of, once you've carried out your carbon assessment, you can then pull up all of your different land management practices, and you can choose the ones you're interested in. And then you go through a process of completing a template for setup costs, repeated costs, etc., to look at the economic impact of setting up that practice and carrying it on for 10 years. You can then do the same with another practice. Any other practice could be the baseline practice you want to compare it to. And you can actually put both of those back into the CBP system, and then you can do a comparison of the two. So you can look at which point you get to your return rate, you get your money back for inputs that you've done, etc. So that is there within the CBP tool. And I know that WOCAT also has its own economic tools and information. So I'll hand over to Tatenda.
Thanks a lot. So there is economic assessment ongoing together with ELD,
Thank you, Tatenda. I see people are asking questions in the chat. So if you could log into Slido, so we have your email address, so we can answer to you later on, that would be great. And here on Slido, I can see several questions popping up on how the CBP is linked to Trans-Earth. I don't know who wants to take that. Eleonore, Tatenda.
Shall I start with that one? So at the moment, the CBP isn't linked specifically to Trends.Earth, but because we are linked to WOCAT, and WOCAT is in the process of linking to Trends.Earth, we really are interested in completing that circle. So that's something we are, again, looking at writing proposals for, trying to get funding to complete that loop so that all of these things are linked together. In terms of, I think somebody else asked a question about LAMPKS. So LAMPKS is this mobile phone app for going into the field and collecting data. LAMPKS has been a part of our GEF project that we've just completed. LAMPKS developed a land management module, and they worked with us to make sure that they collect the same land management information using the same categories, the same crop names, the same tree names, etc., as we need for the CBP. So the two things are very much aligned. If you collect your information using LAMPKS, you will have most of the information on the parameters you need to run the CBP. What we don't have at the moment is an actual link, so you can't sort of link from one to the other. But for us, it's a step better than going into the field with bits of paper. So that's an ongoing process.
Tatenda, do you want to add to that?
Maybe I just can add from the WOCAT side, where we are currently linking the Trends.Earth and LAMPKS together with WOCAT in the before mentioned GEF project, so-called Tools for LDN. So the LAMPKS app, that's an app for soil identification, land cover and soil health monitoring, and land management and farm record keeping. So we'll be linked with WOCAT, and will now pretty soon be it will be possible to get solution for the local, for the local context through the WOCAT database, and through that it will also be linked then in the project with Trends.Earth. But I'm happy to give you more information on that, maybe later on in bilateral or by email.
Thank you, Tatenda. So we are already 1 hour together. We still have a final remark from Andre, who is at ISRIC, Wageningen University. So I suggest that we move on. We still have questions here, so we will be answering you in the coming week. And there are some very specific questions also, Eleonore, to you, I think, on the tool itself. And there is also one question about training. So maybe just to tell here, this was just a 1-hour webinar on the occasion of World Soil Day to show you that this linkage has happened now. But definitely now, as Tatenda was highlighting, we are working on the WOCAT 2020 plus strategy, which includes as a main pillar capacity development. So we will continue developing online trainings, and hopefully you all will be able to join us to also get a more in-depth training then, which will not just be 1 hour, but will last a bit longer to be trained in using the tools and methods. So with that, Andre, I would hand over to you. Andre is also part of the WOCAT executive team on behalf of ISRIC Wageningen University. Andre, over to you.
Thank you, Nico. Thanks a lot, presenters, for the great presentations and for the discussions that have been held. I put together a few slides for those of you who are not familiar with ISRIC, just to introduce you a little bit as to where I come from and how we look at this discussion. Let me share screen. Can you see my screen at the moment? Yeah, can you hear me? Then we are set to go. As already said, ISRIC is an independent foundation. It was established in 1966 and developed into the World Data Center for Soils. So we are glad to be here today. We work together a lot with WOCAT, with University of Colorado State University, and with other players. Our activities relate especially to making soil information and related services available to users. From setting standards on how soil data has to be collected and recorded, but we have gradually moved into from setting the standards here into providing information online, as well as originally in physical maps, but more and more online. We are carrying out training activities on how this information can be collected and used, and mostly in line with today's event. We are looking into applications of soil information. It's our work stream 4. In the corners, you can see our key applications that we try to serve with these services. So a combination of standards and references to make sure our data and information is good, top quality, provide the information to users, capacity building, and application of the soil information. And that last topic is the topic of today. Well, there is a lot to say about how this information is actually to be incorporated in decision-making processes. Here is a nice drawing, a nice painting of how that would work, from figuring out what problems there are to managing soil data, bringing together data from different sources, modeling that into soil properties, but we are moving towards more thematic areas to ultimately gain impact. And actually the impact is the most important part of what we are looking at the moment. Some of our recent developments, apart from our contribution to Carbon Benefits Project, which is not too recent to say that, although our collaboration still is. We could be making available soil grids, which is a means to bring soil property information data available online. You can check that out following the website and the links in there. Recently, only a few days ago, we launched a new portal which is called Soils Revealed, which is visualizing ongoing carbon losses, but also the potential for sequestration of carbon. And we launched also just a few days ago a new app. It's called SQ app, which is making similar data available from soil grids and Soils Revealed, but on a mobile platform. So these are just some of the tools that we are working on. What you don't see here is all the work that we are doing to support the linked tools that have already been mentioned by the previous presenters, including work that WOCAT is carrying out, ICARDA, land degradation neutrality, as Baron Orr mentioned. I don't want to spend much of your time. Just going back to the main theme of today's session. on the importance of linking tools for the common purpose. Some thoughts for you as a takeaway. From our perspective, we see there is a great need to put more and more emphasis on this connection. First of all, that's at the level. In order to achieve impact, we need to come down from the global level, but use the expertise and the data that's available at the global level. But we need to mobilize that at national and local levels. Secondly, on the themes, ISRIC as an institute focused on soil information works on sustainable land management, and we realize that forces us to bring in data and information from other teams and to make sure we link that without, of course, doing that ourselves. We need to connect on the purposes. That means we need to link on our sustainable development goals that connect between the different application areas on water management, climate change, sustainable land management, and other related sustainable land management issues. Then the theme of today, the tools, we need to avoid overlaps, but also use synergies. Together we can do a lot more than to present our own tools and our own applications. Then another important thing which we cannot emphasize enough is that we need to connect to users, which is vital for impact for our own work, but also it is the users, the land managers, farmers, and people locally who will ultimately use our tools and data on making it possible to change land use into a more sustainable land use. Last but not least, partners. That's what we're also here for today. I'm very happy to be together with colleagues from WOCAT, from UN, UNEP, UNCCD, and Colorado State to discuss linking these tools, and we are looking further to develop these further. With that, I want to thank you for your attention for these words, and I'll give the word back to Nicole.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you for summarizing and highlighting a few of the activities of ISRIC as well. So with this, we are coming to the end of our webinar. Thank you very much to all of you for your participation. We would like to let you know that the Slido is still open. So if you have more questions, please don't hesitate to log in and ask your questions, or you can also, of course, get in touch directly with any of us, with Eleonore or Tatenda or Guhan, or just write an email to the general WOCAT email address. It was great to see so many familiar faces, but also new faces here, I think from almost all over the world. Many of our partners were here and curious to hear how this linkage has now been developed and where we stand today. So with this, a big thank you to our partners and collaborators, and we are looking forward to continue linking the tools and making it easier for people to report through concerted action and synergies. So with that, thank you very much for your attention. We hope you have a good evening, afternoon, or rest of the morning, wherever you are, and please stay connected, stay in touch, and we are looking forward. Thank you very much.